Thank you all for being here today. We are here to provide information about an incident that we responded to at 47350 Northwest Otis Lane, which is outside of Forest Grove. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Detective Wilde, who will provide limited additional details of the investigation.
Thank you, Sheriff. So on Saturday, August 22nd, 2026 at 5:27 a.m., our deputies were called to assist the Forest Grove Fire Department at the address on Northwest Otis Lane that the sheriff mentioned. The fire department was responding to a report of a vehicle fire. While they were on scene, they discovered human remains and they called for law enforcement to come take over the investigation. Subsequently, the remains of 5 people were discovered, as well as multiple deceased domesticated animals. The Washington County Sheriff's Office Detective Unit is leading the investigation with the support of detectives from the Washington County Major Crimes Team. That's an interagency team that's comprised of detectives from multiple law enforcement agencies throughout the county. This is a complex investigation. It's a large scene. I'm not able to provide additional details at this point regarding the investigation. I do want to emphasize we do not believe this is a random act. And again, very active investigation even as we speak. We will take questions. Again, limited information I'm authorized to release, but we're happy to field some questions. Yes?
The human remains, do we know if they were related in any way?
We cannot provide that information at this point. We're still actually working to determine who the people are and what their connection may be.
Did it seem they were recently deceased at all?
I can't speak to that at this point, yeah.
Were they found near each other?
Again, I can't release any details about this scene, unfortunately, at this point.
To confirm, though, identities unknown.
Yes, currently identities are being confirmed, yeah.
The suspect, do we know, are they still at large?
We do not have anyone in custody at this point. I can tell you that, yeah.
Do you have a suspect that you're searching for?
I can't speak to that. I can just tell you we don't have anyone in custody, and we do not think this was a random act.
Could you repeat the address one more time?
Yeah, 47350 Northwest Otis Lane.
Have you contacted the homeowner at all?
Again, not information I can provide, unfortunately.
Has the investigation expanded to a location in Beaverton?
I can't speak to that. I'm not aware of that information at this point. Yeah.
Was there any knowledge of victims being duct taped?
I don't have any of those details for release right now. Like I said, it's a very active investigation. The sheriff will speak to the amount of resources we have on this, but there's many partner agencies involved right now. So, yeah.
Sorry if this was asked, but do we know the timeline if they were deceased prior to having that night, or if this is maybe something that's ongoing?
That's a part of the investigation we're still trying to work out.
Can you provide any more details about the fire itself that preceded them finding these deceased bodies?
I'm not able to speak to the fire. Obviously, the fire department was called to a fire, but I can't talk about the extent of the fire or what that looked like.
Can you speak to what was exactly on fire when they got there?
I cannot, no.
Any threat to the public?
I'll just say this person, we're investigating this as 5 people that are deceased, and we do not have anyone in custody. So while we think this is not a random act, obviously there's someone that we don't have in custody that committed this act.
What should neighbors or people who live in the area do to make sure that they keep themselves and their families safe?
I just think always exercise precaution, lock your doors. If you see anything suspicious, please call us. Again, we still have a heavy presence out in that area today, and we have maintained one since early yesterday morning.
Just to be clear, this is like a homicide investigation, right? Like, you believe these people were victims of homicide?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you speak to any early challenges or difficulties you guys have faced as beginning investigations? Any fire turning into now homicide investigation?
I think just in general, homicide investigations are extremely complex. They consume a lot of resources, and of course, anytime you have one person deceased, let alone 5, that's a logistical challenge. And so again, it's a large scene, it's a complex investigation, and there are many people involved in this investigation, so it's just taking a lot of time.
Sheriff, are you able to to speak a little bit more about the size. You know, anytime you hear something like this many people, it's really distressing. But for you in Washington County, you know, when's the last time, if you can even remember, something this large and what goes into investigating something like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that in my 22 years here, I have not been a part of or witnessed a scene quite this complex involving this type of an investigation. And I'm just going to lead in and say that I recognize that this incident is deeply concerning to our community. Our investigators are working to determine what happened, and we have dedicated every available resource to this case. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the personnel from the Washington County Sheriff's Office and the various agencies that have stepped up to help us and to respond to the scene to assist with this investigation. For me, I want to make it clear, investigators would love to talk with anyone familiar with this residence or the people that live there. There are no details too small. You can contact our non-emergency number at 503-629-0111, but our investigators are going to ask that anyone with any available information please contact us so that we can work to make sure that our community is safe.
About the domesticated animals, dogs, cats, how many?
We're not releasing that information at this point, just the domestic animals.
Can you speak to the number of agencies involved in their investigation, and specifically name them?
I'm not going to name them because I don't have a conclusive list. Our media release will have a full list, which is going to go out following this press conference of the involved agencies. I can tell you that most agencies, police agencies in Washington County are involved. Obviously, we have forensic teams, the medical examiner's office, Washington County Animal Services was involved. There's lots of different teams, and then teams within the sheriff's office as well. So an exhaustive list will be on our media release that comes out. But again, there's almost no part of this investigation that hasn't touched various teams on our agency.
The FBI, are they involved as well?
They're not, no.
How big is the property that you guys are investigating? Is it branching out to neighbor properties?
I can't speak to how big the property is. I actually am unsure. Obviously, it's a rural area, and there are other homes out there, but there's a lot of vegetation and you know, land and hills and forests out there. So I'll just say it's a rural area that's got a lot of various properties on it.
Can you say how that's been, how that terrain has helped or hindered in the investigation? Are you combing through the area? Does that make it more difficult to investigate something of this scale?
We're still early on in the investigation and the investigative steps we're taking, so I can't speak to if that's been a challenge thus far. Obviously, we're just in a more rural area, and that impacts, you know, space and all kinds of things. But so far, I don't know that that's been a factor in the investigation, but it certainly could be in the future.
Were all of the deceased found in the vehicle?
I can't speak to the specific location of where the deceased people were located.
Can you speak to why it took 24 hours, more than 24 hours to release any information about it so far? Is it specifics of the case itself? I know it's not normal for police departments to wait that long usually.
Yeah, this is a very complex investigation. The number of personnel we had and the activeness of it, once we determined the severity of what happened, we wanted to make sure that we had accurate information to release and that we were doing that in a responsible way. We recognize that the amount of time is a concern. However, again, just balancing the investigative piece, there's also, we were trying to identify these people and notify their next of kin before we had a press conference. So that's a factor in any death investigation, is trying to notify people's families of what happened. But again, very active investigation with a lot of moving pieces.
Have they been notified yet, the next of kin?
I can't speak to that.
You mentioned 5 victims and believe that all intentional or targeted suspects. Confirming that, just that, like.
Yes, this is being investigated as a quintuple homicide, 5 people deceased, yeah.
I guess, do you feel in the day since this incident was discovered that you feel like you've made significant forward progress in the investigation, or do you still feel like you're still kind of at the starting stage, getting your bearings a little bit?
I mean, we've obviously, been able to make some progress in the last day and a half that we've had. But again, really early on in an investigation that's complex and has so many moving pieces, we're learning more information really every minute.
Has the first day mostly been trying to figure out who these people are and identifying their families, essentially? Or?
That's a big part of it, of course, right? We want to understand who these people are, and that's going to be a big piece to the case. But again, there's many, many moving pieces to this investigation.
Do you anticipate a timeline roughly after notifying victims next of kin, when those names might be available?
I can't speak to that just because of the challenges that we have in this case. Yeah. But of course, as soon as we have additional information to release to the public, that's a priority for us to do.
Are there any concern that there is additional victims?
Not at this point in time. Again, just want to reiterate what the sheriff said. We're looking to hear from anyone that knew the people that know or knew the people that reside at that address or their associates. Anyone with information, please call our non-emergency line.
Did the victims live at that house?
I can't provide that information.
Do you have a suspect in mind?
We're not speaking to that at this point in time.
Is it believed that the suspect is still at large, or is one of the bodies possible?
We don't have anyone in custody at this point.
I guess he meant, does it seem like it's like a murder-suicide type of situation? Like one of the victims could also have been one of the perpetrators as well.
Again, we're investigating this as 5 people that were murdered. Yeah. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.